Do, 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 do. I wonder if anyone is actually on. I don't seem to have the same issue as last week. That makes me happy. Doesn't look quite as grainy, I think. Or I'm very wrong. Who knows? Well, we'll give a second for people to get online and be watching and things. Especially our friends to the far north. No, it's still pretty grainy and full screen. Eh, well, no big deal. All right. Drink some tea. Get everything ready to rock and roll. Rock and roll. Yes, I know, Gmail. I know that I'm live. Isn't it nice? Isn't it nice when you tell me what I'm doing? That just seems like a very. I'm sure that there is a use for it. I'm sure that there is an importance to it. I just don't know what it is, and I frankly don't care. To me, it seems incredibly annoying to be informed that I am online when I am, in fact, quite aware that I am, in fact, online, seeing as I'm here online in front of you. Well, it's been more than a minute. So last week, we talked about Taco's meeting with Zagrok, and then the party's meeting with the king. Thank you, Zach. You're so useful. I hope that y'all got the TV set up and you can watch together this time, which is spectacular and super great for both of you. So we talked about Taco's meeting with Zagrok and the party's meeting with the king, and just how all of that kind of worked together to produce them heading out to go to Yaro, not Lori. I get my cities mixed up sometimes, and the old elven outpost. And along the way, ran into a little encounter, a little fun time, a little combat, and a god-touched goblin who unfortunately didn't get to do as much as I wanted him to. The party did pretty well on their charisma saves, and they stayed pretty well out of his way after the first time I made someone make a charisma save. So that was intriguing. And then obviously meeting the seeress, the old woman in the farmhouse that, though she had lost her sight, had gained a sight beyond sight. It's the Thundercat fan in me. So at the end of the session, they all got their titles. I was not able to find where those titles are. They're written down somewhere. I really like putting things like that on paper. It feels very tactile. I'm a very tactile writer. And I like writing with my hand rather than typing. I also often write with my hand faster than I type, and that's part of the problem. But unfortunately, it means sometimes things get shuffled between notebooks. And while this one seems to have every other growing, magical thing that I've ever made for this campaign, it does not seem to have the titles that I used for this iteration, which is mildly disappointing. But I'd like to talk through my theory in design in those at least a little bit first, which is that, oh, that's funny. So I just found one page where I started writing, but I didn't actually finish it all. Which is that, when you first get the item, you get some sort of bonus. It's relatively small, but it will at least kind of start you down the path of what makes that item special, unique, and yours. Why would you want it? And so it's kind of like those second level abilities that most classes have. Not first level, The rogue isn't really a rogue at first level. I don't think the rogue is really a rogue until they gain what is it called, trickster's cunning at second level, and that's really the time when they become a rogue, and they become what they what really makes them special and unique. Whereas barbarian, they get rage at first level. That definitely helps. But it's that idea, early on in a class, you gain some ability that just makes you say, oh, this is what a rogue is. This is what a barbarian is. This is what a bard is, whatever. And same thing here. So when you first get it, you get something that informs that idea, but isn't necessarily powerful. And then 5 times along your leveling process, you get additional things that go along with that. Now, eventually, just like with growth in a class, that growth sometimes is just a bonus to a thing you already have. So if at the beginning you have a +1 to attack and damage, then you get a +2 to attack and damage. Cool. That sort of idea. But later on, you're also going to get other things that are going to make it more what makes this item yours. What makes this title, this item, this whatever, the thing that defines your character. Because any character can have a flame tongue, but not any character can have a flame tongue that can also summon a flaming shield, or that can explode in flame, or what else did I give the flame tongue? Because that's the easy version. Or that gives you resistance to cold damage because you're on fire. So it's not just something that is a flaming sword. It's a flaming sword that's more than that later on down the line. So the one that I love to reference is the Armor of Nature's Ways, and this was given to a druid, moon druid, loved wild shaped literally every opportunity that he had the chance to. And the first ability was very simple. You gain a swim speed and a climb speed equal to your walking speed. There you go. So now you don't have to wild shape to be able to swim and to be able to climb. You can, and along with that, all of the abilities in this armor grant to any wild shape form you're in. So now you change into a badger because you want the ability to rage. Maybe that was a 3.5 thing. Not the point. You change into a bear because it's a great combat form to take. Well, there's this river over there. The monsters start retreating into the river. Cool. You have a swimming speed because you have this armor that incorporates all of the abilities of nature and of nature's ways, and go from there. Now, most of these have very, kind of self-descriptive names: Armor of Nature's Way, Sword of Flagellation, Writer's Book, actually named after a writer who wrote the Hoyle's Book of Card Games, or wrote who wrote the first tarot deck, or the most common tarot deck used today. Pendant of Pelor's Many Faces, Sash of Volcar, actually named after the mountain spirit in Volcano Island. Oh crap, what is the name of that game? It's sitting right behind me. No, it's not. Never mind. Not the point. It's named after a thing from a board game. But, if the players don't know about that board game, then nobody cares. So, these names are all very evocative. They're very simple. They tell you kind of what's going on with it. But I give the names afterwards. I usually write all the abilities out and then give it a name. Fireball Island. Yes, yeah. Volcar is the mountain in Fireball Island. And so, I write out all the abilities, and then give it a name, because I want the name to be something where, maybe I don't tell you what the level 15 ability is of this title, but you might kind of work it out, So in the Armor of Nature's Way, first you start with swim speed, climb speed. Cool. Great. Nice and easy. I can turn into a slug, and now I can climb, and then the second ability, you get +1 to attack and damage for natural weapons. So now when you are wild shaped, now you have magic weapons, and you have that extra +1, because everybody loves having an extra +1. It's good stuff. Next, you can, as a bonus action, gain +4 armor class. But each time you hit, that number goes down by 1 until it becomes 0. And this is kind of like your skin is turning to wood. You harden your skin, but as that wood is hit, it is going to break away, and it's going to off, So you hopefully just don't get hit, but if you do, they're going to start whittling you down. Then +2 to attack and damage for natural weapons, and burrow speed equal to walking speed. So now you can turn into that bear and burrow, or now you don't have to turn into a mole to burrow and get under an enemy's wall. Now you can be a bear or whatever it is that you want to be, along with swim speed, along with climb speed. Then next ability, +3 to attack and damage, plus 1d6 cold damage for all melee weapon attacks. Melee weapon attacks. I don't remember specifically what made me say cold was the thing to do. I just wanted to give this person a little something. It's a pretty high level when they would get that, but at least now your staff strikes aren't pointless. They have something to them. And melee weapon attacks would qualify also your natural weapons. So this is an extra little thing to that as well. And you gain fly speed equal to walking. So now your bear can fly. Why not? What the heck? I took a lot of inspiration from Master of Many Forms, which was a prestige class in 3rd edition. I think they brought it over 3.5, but I don't remember if they did. It was in Complete Divine. But I remember it from 3rd edition book called Wild and something else, or something else in Wild. But it was a book about rangers, barbarians, and druids. And there was a prestige class called Master of Many Forms that slowly, increased the ability of the wild shape, not just the CR, challenge rating that you could turn into, but also enhancing the abilities of those. And eventually, at final level in this prestige class, you actually became a shape changer. You were no longer human, elf, whatever. You were whatever you wanted to be. So your type actually changed. It was very intriguing. That mattered a little bit more then than it does now, but it's an interesting little thing. And then your final ability is +4 to attack and damage for natural weapons, plus 2d6 cold for melee weapon attacks, and your wild shape max challenge rating is 5. So at 20th level now you can change into 5th challenge rating, which I think you can only get up to 4 with Druid 20th level. So it's not a lot, but it's a little something, and that gives you access to a couple forms that you don't have otherwise. So it's, is this something that is entirely game changing? Yeah, to a point, if you're smart about it, if you're using it well, but most of the abilities are not just straight damage. Most of the abilities are not just making you a better druid. They're giving you options, and that's a lot of my focus in a lot of these is give you reactions, give you bonus actions, especially for martial characters, give you abilities to use all of the things that you have as a character. And as a fighter or rogue or what have you, well, rogue probably not, but in many cases you don't necessarily have access to that. So I want to go over one more that I made. This is actually from the first time that I ever ran Plot of Conquerors. I created the crossbow. I believe it's called the spell holding crossbow, and it's influenced heavily by spell holding weapons from 3.5 because that is my baseline. Is it not in here? I'm going to be disappointed if it's not in here. Then the power many faces, blah, blah, blah. Blades of Cord's Blessing, Robe of the Archmagi, Sash of Volcar. And I also did things like the Robe of the Archmagi. Now instead of the robe being this one singular, it does everything item, it will eventually, but you still get to be the cool guy with the Robe of the Archmagi at level 4. Crossbow of the Arcane is what it was. So those of you who have played a lot of tabletop role-playing games, namely Dungeons & Dragons, and know how spells can be used and the crazy things that can happen with it, will probably find a lot of ways to use this item to incredibly great effect. And that was actually part of my intention in it. This was for a very new player, never played a tabletop role-playing game before, and I wanted to get him to kind of understand the limitless aspect of TTRPGs, and that in many ways this is a hobby of, rather than video games, you can do what you want. You can do whatever you want. So Crossbow of the Arcane starts with +1 to attack rolls, not damage, just attack, and it doubles the range. So now it's a crossbow with like 600-foot range or some bullshit. I don't remember. Insane. If you really need to be that person and, shoot from whoever the fuck far away. Next ability, and this is where it really gets to be the Crossbow of the Arcane, is as an action, you may cast a spell onto the bolt loaded into this crossbow. That spell casts from the bolt after it hits or misses its target. So I'm going to take this crossbow, I'm going to cast Fireball onto the bolt, and then next turn I'm going to fire that bolt. Even if I miss, Fireball is going to originate from the bolt. Now let's say that you put on this bolt Prestidigitation. I can now make a noise from way over there, wherever I fired that bolt. I could put on their Crown of Madness, it's normally a touch spell. Now I can hit someone from 600 feet away, or 1,200 with disadvantage, or whatever the range is. I don't have these things memorized. Not the point. This is a crazy powerful thing. Does it take time? Yes. But I believe firmly, to a point, that a rogue, in many cases, should be a target locator and a target eliminator. That's what I've always envisioned the rogue as, even from back in the day. They were the people who found the one thing that needed to be eliminated, isolated it, and finished it off. And that is something that this crossbow makes you really able to do. Take one turn, hide, stay the fuck away, cast the spell in that you need, whatever that spell is, and the next turn, fire. Or even load it up with something and know at the beginning of the fight you've got that thing in there. If you know kind of your go-to spell, you could also perceivably put in here Cure Wounds. Heal. Now that is a ranged spell, not a touch one. It is an incredibly powerful ability, but I knew giving it to a new player who was not the type to be able to really think through all of these things, would find it intriguing, but over time would learn ways to use it, or possibly with the team together would determine, wait a minute, you've got this thing. Hey, we need to do that thing. Then the next ability, +2 to attack rolls, +1 to damage rolls. So now attack and damage are both going up, but it's always going to be one behind, kind of. +2 to stealth rolls to cast spells stealthily. So now you can hide, cast your spell in, and hopefully people not notice you. I do typically make my spellcasters roll stealth if they want to not be seen. when they're casting, because in my opinion, casting a spell is overt. It is either loud or bright or both. Silent spell is absolutely a thing, subtle spell is absolutely a thing, but without those, it is a bright, colorful, loud affair. You don't get just whisper fireball. You have to yell and gesture, and light and sound erupts from your hands. You're casting a fireball. You're casting a lightning bolt. You're making something special and insane. Then you get the ability to cast spells into the bolt as a bonus action. So now you can do it on the same turn. This is relatively high level. I think it's like level 12 when I give that ability. So at that point, classes can do some pretty crazy stuff. And and this is for an arcane trickster rogue. So they do have natural spell casting. But now your spells that only that normally cost an action now take a bonus action as long as they're going into the bolt for you to then fire. Then +3 to attack rolls, +2 to damage rolls, quadruple the range of the crossbow. So now you're talking 1,200 feet, which again is just insane. And then the final ability, when you cast a spell into a bolt, regain a spell slot one lower than the one cast. Now making the Arcane Trickster have an incredible amount of spell slots. Now, do they really need that at this level? No, not really. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was a cool ultimate ability of the weapon, of the item. But that was my old design. My old design was focused on weapons, armors, things, I really like the idea of the title more. And I do remember most of the titles. So Matt was named the Harrier because he was very mobile. He was constantly darting in and out. He was, whips and water and air elements. So the Harrier. Sunshine was chosen of many because she was chosen by Litamara. But when they met with Litamara, they found out that her armor had the notations of both Pelor and Melora. So now she has a total of 3 gods choosing her. She's also kind of caught between worlds. And so she's, half elf, half human. She's just all of these things kind of caught between everything. So she's chosen of many. Urza, I called something to do with scales and mutation. Now, you may not know this already, but there's a character in a well-known anime called Fairy Tail. And Urza, the character, is named after Urza, the character from Fairy Tail. Urza in Fairy Tail wears different armors that grant her different abilities. And so I gave this character basically new wild shapes, which altered her base stats and base abilities to be able to do unique and special things. And took direct inspiration from Urza from the show. So making her a little bit more like her namesake, the Atako became Shadow in the East or Shadow from the East, one of the two. I don't remember. It's been a while. I really just need to find these, but that would, be useful. And that one I actually labored on for a while. Then Smalls was something to do with sleep. Shut Eye. Because Smalls had used the sleep spell quite frequently and really liked that idea, but sleep just doesn't scale well with D&D and how, kind of the escalating level of encounters. And so each of those titles now kind of defines the character a little bit more. And similar idea, later levels, they're going to gain additional abilities that make it more special, extra, all the things. But most importantly, it was that it wasn't an item, it was a name. And I was planning to kind of play with names where in different locations, in different places, people would call these people and this group different things. I've said rat catchers, I've said adventurers, I've said God touched, but some people were going to call them small folk of small mind. Some of them were going to call them younglings. Just all kinds of things like that. And these names and these titles was going to be a big play to what you are and how people think of you. So that's kind of a big part of the design. Oh, and I mentioned earlier, and this is what I wanted to talk about mostly, that the design has changed. I used to design the item and then name it. And now with titles, I went exactly the opposite direction. I made the title first. So for each person, I wrote out a few different ideas. Sunshine was kind of stuck in between these different options. I was like chosen of many, or stuck between, or half and half, like just writing down ideas, brainstorming. Brainstorming is so important in my opinion, especially when we're designing. We're thinking of something more than just, what's happening tomorrow. When we're actually designing something to exist beyond one session, is brainstorm. Just throw those ideas out there, see what sticks. And that's exactly what happened. Sunshine went through like 4 or 5 iterations before I decided on Chosen of Many, and I really dug it. And it finally kind of worked its cogs together. Taco, same thing. I was just stuck with Taco. I was like, the hidden king, no, too obvious. A shadow, he hides. He's from the east. He's got kind of a shitty person thing going on. Do I want to play with that? I want to play with drugs. I don't know. I had no idea. And finally, shadow and east just slammed into each other like particles in a particle cannon. And I decided on Shadow in the East, or Shadow from the East, and that kind of built it all together. And he basically gained rogue abilities, so you'd be a ranger rogue without having to actually multi-class. Fun little way of kind of building all that together. So they were given their titles last. God, it's been almost 30 minutes. They were given titles last session, and they the next morning found the Seeress dead, and she had fulfilled her final duty and given them their titles, and then she moved on. So they moved on. They got back on their flying mounts / guitar thing and flew further north and east toward Yaro. Before they even got there, they saw this army marching and heading towards Blackstone. It was very clear that it was heading towards Blackstone. And the reason that I did this, A, was 2 things. B, I could have put them back in the fort, and the problem is then it doesn't feel very urgent. You see an army on the march, that's urgent. That is a concern. You see an army, in a fort getting ready to go. Well, sure, they might be leaving in the morning, but do you think of them as urgent? Even if they're 4 days away, even if they're 2 days away, is that urgent? But they are on the march. It feels more real, more immediate. And if I remember correctly, they were off, they weren't like directly below them or anything like that. But, so the party had to choose to investigate. They had to choose to engage, because they could have not. They could have absolutely not. They could have gone to Yaro, seen that it was taken over by goblinoids, maybe seen the signs of a prior army that's now left, maybe engaged with the small guard that had been left behind, and kind of gone from there. But this was a way of giving them the opportunity to intercept and to learn really what the point of why they were being sent to learn was. There's an army. It is coming. It is big. And in it are goblins, bugbears, and hobgoblins, and they're clearly led by some very tough, very hardy, very seasoned hobgoblins. This is an experienced army. This is not just a ragtag group of goblinoids heading off in a horde. They are disciplined. So they see that, they immediately head back. And they're able to move much faster than the army. So they arrive back at Blackstone with only a couple, maybe a few days before the army arrives. They immediately rush into the king, tell him he is concerned, but it's exactly as he feared, and he mobilizes the city to war. And he says, if you have fulfilled your oath to me, I will grant you passage into the forest to the north. If you are willing, I would appreciate you staying. You are hardy, tough people. I have use for people like you. There is more gold in the coffers. I need whatever I can get to be able to survive this oncoming threat. And they said, let me think about it. And then pretty much immediately, one or all, either just Taco or all of them, headed off to Zagrok to meet Zagrok. And I think it was just Taco. 1 second, drink some tea. So they head off to meet Zagrok, or Taco does, and tells him what he saw. And Zagrok says, that sucks. And opens a door, a secret door in the wall to his right, and starts to walk through it and says, have fun. And Taco is just flabbergasted. How would you leave these people? How could you just abandon all of this in the time of need? Look, buddy, I ain't in it for the long haul. It's kind of this philosophical argument. The guy who's just put here to to deal with this shit and, at the king's orders, at a certain point, he's not going to stick around when there's an army at the door. And so he gets ready to head off, and Taco eventually just says, you know what? Fine, whatever, go. I'll take care of it. And that was the moment I was waiting for. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, when Zagrok, or I guess last week, Zagrok mentioned to Taco, this can be yours. You can take it over. And I doubt the king would even be angry if you did. And that was a temptation. I didn't know if he would take me up on it, but after that, I got a little bit more working of the player's mind. And there was a couple times where he said things about responsibility and having to shirk it and all of these things. And I said, if I forced his hand, he would take it. And that's exactly what I did. I said, okay, this is the moment. This is your choice. This is your call to action, hero. Are you going to take it? Or are you going to refuse? And either one is right. Either one is okay, even. But the question was, are you going to? And he did. So, get all the characters back together, and he reveals, that he's taken over. Zagrok abandoned the place, and it's this or, maybe all these people die, and that's not right. And I said, all right, let's get some stuff together. I had printed prior to this some pages from MCDM Productions' Kingdoms in Warfare, which I'm a huge fan of. I believe it's an absolutely fantastic system of allowing this change in game structure when the characters go from adventurers to movers and shakers on the world stage. And so I gave them options. They could be an arcane order or an underworld syndicate or a royal court or all these different things. Eventually decided on underworld syndicate, and with the specialty of Assassin's College. And so then they all chose their titles. Taco was the Don, also head of narcotics. Smalls was head of negotiations as a bard. Urza was head of records and thereby a lot of magic. Sunshine was head of enforcement, because Sunshine is terrifying for some reason. And Matt is head of operations, very intelligent, very able to keep everything in order. And I then built them some extra things to make it unique. And these are the things that never got to kind of hit the stage. And I'll talk about a lot of this next week. And the New Haven Survivors, the 6th District, the Underworld Syndicate, Assassin's College, and what makes it unique, what makes it special. We've gone pretty long already. And that was basically the rest of the session, except for one last thing. I said, okay, well, you have all of these people now. I told them, I don't have them built yet, but, especially because I rolled randomly for most of it, but you gather all the lieutenants together, and Smalls and Taco wanted to announce to everyone, hey, this is the new boss, not same as the old boss. And, so you gather all the lieutenants together in this one big room, and this large, long table, just enough seats for everyone. And Smalls plays out this great scene, jumps on top of the table and walks down and says, you may recognize, something to the effect of, kind of that intro speech. It was absolutely marvelous. And introduces the Don. And Taco walks out from behind a curtain and reveals himself and says, okay, this is what's happening. And this is what we're going to do. And so it was this, this great little moment, kind of getting everybody together. They're going to make weapons. They're going to smelt down everything that they've got, stop all your sales. We're going to make poisons. We're going to make weapons. We're going to do all these things. And yeah. And then I actually made armies. So Kingdoms in Warfare by MCDM Productions also includes, along with the ability to make your group, whatever that group is, but also to make armies and to have them clash. But it is best if those armies clash before the main fight between the player characters and the enemy leaders. And so I was going to fabricate some reason, some way that they encounter, the head dude for the enemy army, for the goblinoids. And then I constructed armies on both sides, and Zach, Matt's player, and I actually played through that fight. And the forces of Blackstone won, though it took a while. I think it was 4 or 5 rounds. And they ended up winning, and in there were some of the units that Taco and the 6th District have raised, have made. And so it was very interesting. It was a good time. That was a really great way of utilizing the system. It made the fight really interesting. And as much as it mattered which side won, because which side wins on which round does affect the fight between the player characters and the enemy leaders. It also was a great way to be able to see, this could have gone the other way. The sides were pretty darn even. And If Zach or I had not planned the way that we did or done something differently, the dice had gone differently, it could have gone the other way, and the army itself could have lost. Again, that doesn't stop the players from winning, or vice versa. But yeah, it was a really good time. This was that was basically the end. That scene, and then talking through the organization and kind of getting everything ready. I treated it as if there was going to be another session. Unfortunately, one of our players was leaving us to move far, far north, but the campaign kind of stopped after this. So that was the last session, but it doesn't mean I'm done talking. Doesn't mean there's not more to go over. Doesn't mean there's not more interesting design ideas and design things that I love to talk about. So next week, we're going to talk about the organization, the New Haven survivors, the 6th district, and the colorful characters that are in there, and what makes everything kind of unique and special. So if there's nothing else from my two lovely friends watching, the only two lovely friends watching, then yeah, that's about it. Well, my office hours are closed, and that is it for this week. So I will see all of you fine ladies and gentlemen next Wednesday, same time, same channel. We'll talk from there.